Now, I promise you that investing into the stock market does not have to be as complicated as most people might think. Now, I say this coming from an investor like myself that in the early days, as you can see right here, decided to invest into numerous different single stocks and ETFs, so many to the point to where in my long-term portfolio that you can see right here, I currently have around 50 different individual positions. Now, I'm not saying that a portfolio that has less positions might be better than more positions, but in this video specifically, I'm going to go through a 5 ETF portfolio that basically achieves everything that most long-term investors are looking for. Now, this 5 ETF portfolio is going to offer a massive potential for growth, making your relatively small portfolio when you start into a massive compounding machine later on. But also this 5 ETF portfolio is going to offer almost perfect diversification, if you ask me, as well as a ton of income potential from day one. Now, especially if you're in your earlier days of investing, let's say you're year number 1, 2, 3, this video is going to be extremely helpful, I promise. So if you want to see what I think might be the perfect 5 ETF portfolio that pretty much crosses off what most long-term investors are looking for, well, make sure to stick around, drop a like down below, and let's get right to the first ETF. If you are a dividend investor who wants to level up your portfolio, you need to be tracking your dividend income consistently. And that's why I created the perfect dividend tracker that I've used to scale my dividend income up to all-time highs over the last year. Now, along with this dividend tracker, you're also going to receive my A to Z dividend investing ebook, which shows you how I personally started from $0 several years ago to now where I earn over $7,500 per month in dividends. So if you want this tracker and the ebook, go to the first link down below in my description and grab it today. Now, this video is sort of dedicated to a post I made over on X, and follow me if you guys don't already at Devoted Dividend. I'll follow all of you guys back. Just message me or tweet at me and tell me you're from YouTube. But I literally built out a perfect 5 ETF portfolio on my X page that, like I said, literally offers a massive amount of growth, but also income from day one and almost everything else in between. Now, this brings me right into the first ETF, number 1 out of 5 of this quote-unquote perfect 5 ETF portfolio that offers almost everything. The number 1 position would have to be SCHG, or the Schwab US Large Cap Growth ETF. Now, this ETF is brought to us by Schwab and is one of the best large cap growth ETFs that I've ever seen. The objective of the fund is to track as closely as possible before fees and expenses the total return of the Dow Jones US Large Cap Growth Stock Market Index. This ETF is super low cost to hold on to, with a total expense ratio of just 0.04%. And with some of the top names being names like Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, etc., this ETF is giving you almost perfect exposure to growth names that at least over the past several years have done absolutely amazing. Not to mention, if you look at SCHG's chart on the max time frame, sure, there have been periods of a few months or so where this ETF has dipped and offered buying opportunities, but for the most part since inception back in 2009, this ETF is traded almost straight up and to the right. Now, to put things into perspective, in 2009, this ETF was trading around $3.29 per share. Now, just as of recently, even after a slight pullback, $28 more or less per share, which has definitely made several growth investors very rich over time. Now, even though this ETF is much more growth focused, it does pay a dividend that's absolutely tiny, but again, the idea is you're going to buy into this one for massive growth exposure. All that to say that this ETF could be a perfect pillar in a long-term portfolio, especially for some growth exposure. Now, speaking of Schwab, another Schwab ETF that I think would be perfect to add into this perfect 5 ETF portfolio would of course be SCHD now. This is the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF. Now, this fund's objective is to track as closely as possible before fees and expenses the total return of the Dow Jones US Dividend 100 Index. This ETF also is very low cost to hold on to and offers you exposure to different names that at least historically have offered dividends and have offered dividend growth, making your cash flow grow over the years. Now, even though this ETF is more of a dividend or dividend growth focused ETF, the ETF has also grown very healthily over time too. As far as just price goes, since the last 13 or so years, this ETF, not even including dividends, is up around 218%. Now, as far as dividends, SCHD of course offers almost a 3.5% to 4% starting yield. With massive dividend growth historically, as you can see right here in the chart, almost every single year, SCHD investors have been receiving more and more cash flow, which is definitely going to help, especially for a long-term portfolio. Now, this is one of my personal favorite investments because, of course, it has grown over time, but also offers diversification in different dividend payer names and also offers a nice starting yield, but on top of that, a growing dividend at that. So for that reason, I think this ETF would be a perfect number 2 position in the perfect quote-unquote 5 ETF portfolio. But because in this 5 ETF portfolio, I also want to offer some more growth exposure, what better way to do it than invest into the Invesco QQQ ETF, which has offered massive gains historically. Now, this ETF tracks the NASDAQ 100, which gives you access to the performance of the 100 largest non-financial companies listed on the NASDAQ. Now, say what you want about QQQ, but there's been very few ETFs out there throughout the market over most timeframes that have been able to outperform it. I mean, even comparing this ETF to the S&P 500 index, you're seeing both of these assets offer massive gains, but QQQ has been outstanding. Now again, because this ETF is going to be sort of on the growth side of things, this is exactly what it has done. I mean, since 2009, the ETF was trading at $45 per share, now over $500 per share, and up almost 850% on the max time frame. Because this ETF is so technology focused, with over 50% of the names making up that sector, this ETF is going to offer, at least what it's done historically offered, massive growth potential for your long-term portfolio. But I promise this 5 ETF portfolio is going to offer growth and dividend income. So dividend income is exactly what you're going to get with this next ETF. We're talking about DIVO, or the Amplify CWP Enhanced Dividend Income ETF, which is honestly one of my favorite ETFs across the entire market when it comes to income potential from day one. Now it says right here why invest into DIVO. It says income potential comprised of high quality dividend oriented stocks along with cover calls and individual stocks. This ETF offers active management, which allows the portfolio manager or CWP to identify opportunities and risks and act on those decisions in real time. Also, it says seek to lower volatility. Dividend and option income may provide lower share price volatility versus the overall market during times of a broad-based market declines. Now DIVO is awesome because it buys into a small basket of holdings, around 30 as of right now. But then with that, they sell cover calls on individual names, which offers a massive potential for income a lot sooner. And we're talking almost 5% starting yield, which is much higher than you're going to get compared to if you invest in the regular markets. Now, another thing I love about DIVO is that even though it's more or less an income ETF, I mean, it has dividend income in the name of it, the ETF has actually grown over time too. It's not the fastest grower across the entire market, but in the last several years, it has almost doubled. Now, for those investors that want some more income potential, DIVO is one of my favorite ETFs to look into, and I think it'd be a perfect addition to this 5 ETF portfolio. Now lastly, number 5, the last ETF that I would have in this perfect quote-unquote 5 ETF portfolio that offers massive growth and offers massive income is one of my favorites, JEPQ, or the JP Morgan Nasdaq Equity Premium Income ETF, which is sort of known as the king of cover call or premium income ETFs. Now this ETF buys into the Nasdaq, sells cover calls, and offers a boatload of income by doing so. We're talking anywhere from 45 to 50 cents more or less on a monthly basis over the past several months, and this is all for an ETF that costs around $55 per share. Now what's great about JEPQ, and this is one of the main reasons I think so much investors really love this one, is that it has actually grown over time too, while still maintaining an 8%, 10%, 12% yield. So for those investors out there that want some exposure to, let's say, north of 8% starting yield, which to be real is pretty high, JEPQ is probably one of the safest, best ETFs to do it, at least what we've seen over the past few years. So now that we talked about what I think would be an easy, perfect 5 ETF portfolio for a massive growth potential and income potential, I most importantly have a question for you guys down below. As far as growth goes and as far as income goes in the context of ETFs, what are some ETFs that you think do it best? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like on it and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.